What if I told you the next major global power struggle is not happening in Washington, Beijing, or Moscow? It's happening in Africa, and most Americans are not paying attention. Because while the headlines focus on elections, wars, and tariff fights, the real contest is over something much bigger: minerals, infrastructure, and control of the future industrial system. Africa is no longer being treated by major powers as a distant region on the map. It is becoming a strategic board. Why? Because whoever influences Africa influences access to the raw materials, trade routes, and industrial inputs that modern economies depend on. This is not charity. It is not development language. It is power politics.
The first layer is resources. Africa holds some of the world's most important minerals: cobalt, copper, lithium, manganese, uranium, and rare earths. These are not luxury materials. They are the backbone of electric vehicles, batteries, smartphones, weapons systems, and data infrastructure. If you control these minerals, you control part of the industrial future. That is why Africa matters so much right now. The second layer is infrastructure. This is where most people miss the real story. It is not enough to own a mine. You have to move the resource. That means railways, ports, roads, processing plants, and export corridors. This is why infrastructure deals are so important. They decide whether value stays local, gets exported, or gets locked into a foreign power supply chain. A mine is geography. Infrastructure is strategy.
The third layer is China. China understood something very early. Influence does not always require military bases. Sometimes it only requires financing, construction, long-term contracts, and access to supply chains. Across Africa, China has invested heavily in ports, rail, energy, and extraction projects. That creates leverage. Not because every project is a trap, but because infrastructure creates dependence, and dependence creates power. Now the United States is paying closer attention. Why? Because Washington understands that the race for critical minerals is not just about Africa. It is about industrial security, clean energy, defense, and reducing dependence on rivals. If the U.S. wants to stay competitive, it cannot ignore where the inputs of the future are coming from. So Africa is no longer an afterthought. It is becoming part of the strategic competition between Washington and Beijing.
From a game theory perspective, each player is doing something rational. China wants supply security and long-term influence. The U.S. wants diversification and strategic resilience. African states want investment, infrastructure, and better bargaining power. The result is not a simple win or lose situation. It is a negotiation over leverage. And in that negotiation, infrastructure and minerals matter more than speeches. History shows this pattern over and over. Great powers rarely fight only for land. They fight for the systems that make land useful. Ports, railroads, canals, trade routes, and raw materials have always shaped empire. Africa today is not just a continent of opportunity. It is a continent where the next phase of global competition is becoming visible.